Hello and welcome to this year's last update by Vegconomist. My name is Nadine Filko, and I'm really happy to, in the next 45 minutes, take a deep dive into the most relevant events of 2025, what we've learned, and what we're taking to 2026. I have to admit, at least for the German market, when the beginning of the year and our new government, I had a bit of a fear that it could be difficult for the alt protein market. But then in the last weeks and months, I've experienced kind of a market boost. And I couldn't imagine better people today to talk about not only the German market, but whatever comes up in their mind for the global, the EU market. But Dennis Pichishulu, CEO and founder of Wunderfish GmbH, Tim Fronzek, co-founder and CEO of Nosh Bio, and Ronja Berthold, Senior Public Affairs Manager for the German-speaking market and Poland at Oatly. Welcome for this last update in this year. I'm so happy to have you here. Dennis, would you like to start and maybe share some insights, not only on your work, of course, and your company, but also has there been any event, any situation that has set the scene in 2025 for you?
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. Like I said, I'm Dennis. I'm the founder of Wunderfish. Maybe a lot of you know me and the company from our B2C brand Betterfish, which is the plant-based fish product line that we have already launched across German-speaking countries with different retailers and food service partners. For us personally, as a company, 2025 felt like a complete reset, to be honest. Why is that? Because, we'll dive into this a bit later as well, but beside our B2C product line, we have launched our first industry ingredient this year and introduced it to a broader audience. As you might know, everything we do revolves around seaweed. So everything we do is seaweed-based ingredients, seaweed-based products, and we finally launched our first ingredient for the industry. And sometimes I felt a little bit like a pre-seed stage founder again, because we needed kind of new branding, we needed new names, we needed a kind of new identity on how to present ourselves, and everything felt like stitched together with a hot needle, especially when we presented at Anuga or something. So for us internally, this was a reset. But if I look, zoom out and look at the industry, it also felt like a big reset in two categories. One is I felt a lot of products have vanished from shelves this year, both from corporates and startups. It felt a little bit like a cleanup. Couple of products who were using the same ingredients all over again kind of disappeared, which I think is good for the market in general and for the development of better alternatives in the future. But also the whole reset in how do we produce and how do we want to produce our food was there. Like when we started 5 years ago and introduced the idea of bringing seaweed, more diversity in ingredients into the food industry, people looked at us like, no, that's not necessary. We just rely on the 5 commodities we've been using for the past 100 years. But these climate shocks that we have seen, supply chains disrupting, citrus greening effects, bird flu, cocoa prices skyrocketing. Finally, people paid attention, and finally people are also going back to the drawing board. This is how I would summarize 2025 from my perspective.
You've already touched upon very many issues we are going to deep dive into later. Tim, would you like to go ahead and tell us a bit more about your work and what has created your 2025 situation? Any development? What has been on your agenda last year?
Yeah, sure. Pleasure to do so. So first of all, thanks for the invitation, also for the introduction. Myself, I'm Tim, CEO and co-founder of Nosh Bio. What we are doing is we are producing an ingredient for the food industry. We are growing a filamentous fungus in a liquid state biomass fermentation process. harvesting the full fungus. And this is what we are kind of serving to the industry, but not only the industry, also food services, for them to help them creating better, cheaper, also healthier products within different range of products. Can be meat analogs, can be even fish analogs, can be very different categories like bakery, ice cream, confectionery, convenience foods, really kind of broad range. But not only this, also in hybrid products. So the ingredient we've developed is, I'd say, the perfect fit to combine also with meat. If you ask me for the personal kind of highlight of the year, definitely was our product launch. So in September, we launched with the canteen in our science park, started selling the first products that were based on our ingredient, which is kind of a mix of different products that are using a hybrid mincemeat that contains out of beef, but also our mycelium. And that was definitely really a big thing. I mean, it's still not supermarket shelves, which we are also aiming for, but seeing end consumers experiencing the product, selling money for it, and do not regret that they did so, was really a great thing. And then, like, from my perspective, at least, if I reflect on the industry, I'd again mention hybrid products. I think this is kind of what probably excites me the most at the moment, and is something that we have put a lot of attention and energy onto within this year. The reason why is because I think what we've seen over the last years is that there were, let's say, mainly two different approaches. The one, the cultivated approach, so trying to grow meat in the lab, which the plus side is obvious, is the quality of what you get, because it's not like meat, it is meat. I think what is not really kind of matching with market requirements is the price and regulatory and like the complexity to really kind of develop this technology to something that can serve the mass market. On the other hand, you have the plant-based approach, which like personally from my perspective also works well, but if we reflect market figures, I think it still is a niche. So we are speaking like within meat analogs at least. I know we also have Oatly here, so I'm already putting this up front here. There are other categories where I think it's performing well, but in meat, I mean, we're working on these technologies and this approach now for, I don't know, 10, 15 years and still not serving more than a percentage point of the market in revenues. And hybrids, I think, is combining the best of two worlds. It's bringing the quality, and this is also, I mean, I know you have the question on your list to speak about our product launch and what end consumers said about the products. But on the one hand, you have the quality and nutritional values and just the end consumer experience that is like meat. There's no difference. But on the other hand, it's cheaper and more sustainable. And I think for me, this really kind of is the most likely solution at the moment. Also, I mean, not long term. I mean, better to replace all of the unsustainable ingredients, but I think this will take a while, and we need solutions very quick. And I think their hybrids can play an important role, at least in meat, not in milk.
That would be a question later on. But let's start with hybrids then. Ronja, do you want to tell us, first of all, more about your work and what set the scene in 2025 for you personally, for your work at Oatly? And maybe also already say something about hybrids, as I have the feeling, I was a bit surprised this year that hybrids were popping up, because actually that's an old method, right? It's an old way of bringing plant-based out there. But Ronja, please tell us more about yourself first.
Yes, thank you. And hello, everyone. So I'm Ronja, doing public affairs at Oatly, the world's original and largest oat drink producer. And yeah, when I've been just thinking about this year and highlights, I had to actually think about the internal retrospective that we did within the company, that all the departments are doing. And one thing that we noticed was that 2025, really so much was happening and it was so full. We couldn't believe that we actually had elections only this year in Germany. So we had this small election campaign that we did as Oatly. And like we really had to, look again, okay, wait, did we really do that campaign this year? Yes, yes, it was this year, because so much happened. And I just I couldn't believe that. So that was more from my personal political work. But for Oatly in general, I think it was also really interesting because this year was really all about taste for the company. So we see that people are more curious to try new flavors and to have new taste experiences. And so we wanted to position ourselves as, the brand for beverage trends. And surprise consumers with new flavors, and convince them that plant-based products can taste even better than animal products. So it's not so much about fighting something, but also convincing consumers with taste. And Tim, because you've mentioned the protein aspect, we also published a Future of Taste report, and in there we kind of discovered, that the issue of fiber is on the rise right now as well. Also in connection to nutritional health, there's a gut health trend. So for us within the industry, we kind of see that, yes, of course, protein is this issue, but there are other things going on as well. A lot of people in Western countries actually get too much protein or eat a lot of protein, but there's at the same time a huge fiber gap that many are not really aware of. So there's, maybe we need to also look at other perspectives here, and some education is needed. And when it comes to hybrid products, I have to say I'm actually really skeptical. And maybe that's also a difference between the dairy and the meat alternative sector. But we as Oatly, we are primarily an oat-based company, which doesn't mean that we are not also looking into other plant-based ingredients as well, maybe while expanding on our oat expertise. But when it comes to a mix of animal-based, plant-based ingredients in one product, I would, like to be convinced. I would be interested in what kind of target groups we're talking about, what the purpose of such products could be, because I have to admit that I'm remaining a little bit skeptical about these.
But I mean, we're not talking about vegans and vegetarians, right? When we're talking about the big market, we're talking about flexitarians, and there are even more words out there. We had a talk with Indy Kaur, and I can't remember what she said, but it was like open omnivores or something like that. Dennis, would you like to share your take on hybrid products and jump in there first now?
Sure. We also exhibited at Anuga, and we were in the alternatives hall, and I was honestly, like Tim, surprised. Or no, what did you say? You were surprised? I think, or Nadine, someone said you were surprised to finally seeing them popping up, because it's old news, But I was actually happy to see them, and I think it's a big opportunity. I'm just, what I think. I think the ones I tasted there were great. Some of them have huge potential. Flavoring was good. Taste was good. The amount of plants versus meat was already, the ratio was already a good start. But when I talked to the producers of, why are they launching hybrids now? I was a bit disappointed, but of course that's the reality. Most of them are launching it now because of high prices of beef and whatever products, and the climate shocks you see, and feed getting too expensive, and the quality of the meat not being that great anymore. So it's not necessarily the sustainability aspect that's driving it, but of course, again, the cost. But like I said, that's the reality in the food world, and we all know that this is the reality and we have to deal with it. But in the end, if that's the push that's needed, I think it's a good way forward, like as a transitioning solution, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, we have to be realistic about any market. Money is making the game, and if it's pushing what we are trying to achieve and pushing our goals, I'm totally in for it.
Yeah.
And my feeling in the last years, well, all in all, we're getting to kind of out of the box. That's how I'm calling it for 2026 theme. And connected to this is also a shift in business strategies. And Dennis, you've done a huge shift. You've already told us a bit about it. Would you like to deep dive a bit more from B2B, from B2C to B2B? And I have a big feeling that ingredients are kind of the thing out there for the market in general. I mean, in the beginning, 8 years ago, I haven't touched ingredients that much, and now it's ingredients. It's all about ingredients. Will you tell us more about your work?
No, of course. And I totally get it that from the outside, it seems like this huge shift. How are we getting from plant-based tuna to a clean label flavor enhancer? But I mean, the common denominator is seaweed for us. And when I started the company 6 years ago, I didn't necessarily start it with the idea of doing a plant-based tuna or other plant-based fish products. For us, this was always like the Trojan horse, kind of to introduce seaweed to the food industry. And I mentioned this already, like 6 years ago when we had this idea, we're going to build the supply chain for seaweed ingredients, look into how can we valorize it and build ingredients like off-the-shelf ingredients that the Nestle's and the Unilevers of the world can actually use. People were just not interested in it. They didn't believe it's going to work, it's going to scale, it's feasible in terms of pricing. And most of all, they were pretty sure that consumers don't want to eat seaweed, on a daily basis. So we had to kind of come up with this Trojan horse, with this proof of concept that is Better Fish, what we launched, the seaweed-based fish products. And honestly, I think it was a good way also internally for us as a company to learn how to walk in the food industry, to understand how do you scale products, what's important, what ingredients are missing. I mean, when we developed those products, we also were looking for ingredients that simply don't exist yet. A lot of products still out there use methyl cellulose. We managed to not use it, but why are they still using it? Why is there not a proper alternative? And you can look into all these ingredients, and the options are not necessarily great. And for us, this helped a lot to really understand, okay, what kind of ingredients do we actually need to work on? And we started internally putting all the resources on the ingredients already 2.5 years ago when I became solo CEO. Before that, I had my co-founder was co-CEO, and I basically made this shift into putting all the resources on the ingredient part, because we needed that time as well to solve a few challenges. I mean, seaweed, why is it still not used on a large scale? Because it usually tastes like fish and it's green. So, and of course, we don't want all the products out there to taste fishy or like harbor water, if you want to be mean, and we don't want all our products to be green. And nobody has really looked into this. I mean, sure, we know alginates and carrageenan, but this is very, very specific species that we derive it from. But there are 10,000 different seaweed species, and all of them show different flavor profiles, different nutritional profiles, different functionalities that we could extract and really build like this toolkit of seaweed. And so we started already like 2.5 years ago. And this year we were finally ready to introduce the first ingredient because we solved these two challenges. So we have a product that's not fishy, that's not green. It's still brown, but it's not green. So with brown, the industry can work with. And this opens up a whole new area of opportunities to actually bring seaweed into.
Yeah, it's crazy. When I read about it, I was excited and it was like, oh my God, this could change the game. And we've got the new ingredient and every product is going to taste super. Tim, what would you say about that? My feeling is in general, algae, seaweed, and mycelium, we didn't think that much about these two ingredients in the last years. And 2025 was an absolute push for both of them, right? I mean, at least for mycelium, definitely, and fermentation.
Yeah, I do agree. I do agree. So maybe first back to the question of ingredient versus end consumer product. My highest respect to any company that is pushing end consumer products, because I know what it means to build this up and to create a brand, because my previous company was an end consumer brand. And this is also why we've consciously decided not to go the route of being B2C, but going B2B, simply because, I mean, at least for our technology approach, we had the feeling that we can bring a bigger impact if we are focusing on using the money we had for developing the technology further, improving product criteria, characteristics, and contributions instead of, and I mean, it costs a lot of money to building a brand and also like, I mean, acquiring end consumers. I mean, I know it's going via the retail, but nonetheless, you need to create this awareness of end consumers for your brand. So that was a conscious decision on our end. I think for mycelium in general, and I do agree. I think it had quite a push also in 25. I do see a few, let's say, advantages, not specifically against algae, to be honest, but I think in general, fungi is something that people just know. Like in autumn, you go in the forest, you cut your mushroom, and I know it's like we are using a filamentous fungus, so it's a slightly different organism, but it's the same, let's say, family. So therefore, end consumer acceptance, if they read there's fungi in it, it's different than, from example, if you use, I don't know, lab-grown meat or insects, maybe even algae, I'm not sure. So I think that's just a little easier, at least in Western Europe. And then secondly, also specifically for the organism we are working with, regulatory wasn't that challenging because it has already been accepted by EFSA as not to be novel. So there was another advantage to say, okay, let's go an easier, faster route. And then also production efficiency, scalability of growing these organisms. We are now using old beer brewing tanks to produce the fungus, so it also doesn't require lots of capex investments to build up your production capacities. Plus, it's growing super quick. We are growing it in 75,000 liter steel tanks, like it's a 3-level high building. And we started in the early morning, and when you arrive next day at the same time, after 24 hours, the full tank of 75,000 liters is full with fungus. So it's just also super efficient, and therefore it pays well on consumer acceptance, but also on affordability. So yeah, and maybe last thought about the B2C versus the B2B. So when we started the business back in, I mean, I met my co-founder late 2020. So we spent designing the idea in 2021. And what we analyzed specifically on meat again is that many companies have tried to push their own brands into the market. And then we took a look at the market and had the feeling, okay, somewhat they couldn't manage to become more than a niche kind of solution. So we said maybe it's necessary to collaborate with the existing players in order to really tackle the mass market. Again, I think Oatly is showing that there are verticals where it's also working differently, but at least within meat, I do believe that without the giants of the industry and helping them to understand that we need to change the way we are working, and also making visible why it's also beneficial for them to change the way they're doing business, I think it's not going to be successful, at least not short term, and that's what we need. We need short term impact.
Maybe I can add one thing, because you said like also stopped with the impact, and I think that's a really critical point. You know, when we also look at how big is the impact we want to have and can have, the B2B is clearly the road to go. Because if we can exchange like a small percentage in every product out there through seaweed, that's a much bigger impact than we can if we just grow our own brand through the Better Fish and plant-based fish products. And that's really something, you shouldn't underestimate. You know, even tiny percentages in every product through seaweed, mycelium, whatever product can make a huge difference. Yeah.
Agreed. And maybe to just one last thought, because I'm not sure if we are getting back to the hybrid products, and I wanted to make this point already earlier in the conversation, maybe just bringing it in here again. So that's the same thing we've been discussing so much in the team. I mean, now we are producing products that contain dead animal. Like a year ago, I mean, that wasn't kind of on our plans. But what we say is, if we are able to replace, let's say, 20% of all the beef in minced beef applications short term, I mean, how long would you have to grow a vegan category that you would bring the same impact on the carbon emissions of the industry? That's just simply because the market is so gigantic. Like, we are consuming 1 million tons of minced beef in Europe per year. Assuming the carbon emissions of beef to be produced, and you cut out 20%, that's just the leverage you can rarely bring with any vegan category at the moment. And also what Dennis said earlier, yes, and I do agree. And also this is why we believe this hybrid category has so much potential, because you can play this sales pitch of you earn better money, or you reduce your cost, or you can offer more competitive pricing. And like, in the perfect world, we would go there and tell them, like, look, you can reduce your carbon emissions by 30, 40, 50%. And they would say, oh, wow, great, that's the product we want to have. But in the end, if they want to hear, and the motivation of the market is more in, I don't know, reducing cost, being more cost competitive, earning more money, and at the same time, while we offer a solution where they can meet those goals and targets, we are reducing the carbon emissions of the industry. I mean, happy to do so. When we launched Rebuy, by the way, and that's my last point on this, we put so much effort in showing in the first web shop on how much carbon you save when you buy pre-owned. And the conversion rate of this first web shop was a complete shit show. And then we said, okay, why is this the case? And we asked our clients why they would even consider buying pre-owned. And they said, because it's cheaper. So we turned the full communication from this sustainability green angle to how much money you would save compared to new. And the conversion rate like went through the roof. And then we said, okay, I mean, we are happy that we are reducing the carbon emissions. If the clients want to save money, then that's the way to go.
Definitely. And this B2C, I don't know, Ronja, do you want to touch upon the difficulties in communication? Because, and also about strategic partnerships regarding B2B, because what I would be really interested in at this point is this is working together with the industry, and of course, and it's again kind of a bit of a Trojan horse. I hope I said it right. But working with politicians is more difficult. Which impact can B2C products actually have regarding policies? Would you give us some insights on that work?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think when shaping policies and when doing political work, companies should really make their voices heard. But as you said, it's also clear that they have to work together with all actors, because you cannot make these changes, these transformations alone. And yeah, you shouldn't have to be alone, of course. And I think there are also maybe unexpected actors involved in this who see the need for change and who want to contribute. So it's super important to be open, but also still firm in pushing for change. I think, that is the key, and that is what companies should be doing. I mean, food is both personal, so, especially when we look at Gen Z and we see that they want food and drinks to be fun, to be shareable on social media and so on, but it's also political. Great example is, for example, a petition campaign that we did this year together with a German retailer and other plant-based drink producers, calling for a change in the unfair value-added taxation of plant-based drinks. So it has both dimensions. So there is a collective responsibility around it. And also true that especially producers and companies have a lot of or can have quite some control over all the processes involved. So they have a special responsibility to care for the resources they're working with, the people, the animals, and nature itself, of course. And the key is to, combine both areas and stay relevant in both areas, and to use that relevance when you also talk to decision makers, or when you make your voice heard in front of decision makers. And as Tim also said, all producers must reduce emissions currently, and the negative impact on the environment and climate. And there's an urgent need for low climate impact solutions that can step in and replace the high emitting ones we rely on today. And so what we did, and this is also, can be used then as a B2C communication, but also for us, it's really important for B2B. There is this new initiative from an organization called Exponential Roadmap Initiative that evaluates and recognizes products and companies as climate solutions. And we teamed up with them and can now proudly say that we are offering products that are climate solutions. So what this means is that Oatly's products have on average 50% lower climate impact than the milk category, while also not shifting the environmental burden to other areas. And this is what we are striving to do at Oatly, to ignite that transformation towards a plant-centric food system. So that's why, we always want to have others come on board and work together with others on these kind of initiatives. And we want to be role models in this area, and wanted to expand within the food and beverage category, and maybe even beyond. So it would be great for others to check that out as well, and to look into it.
Climate solution is very interesting because actually when talking about how to communicate the product, I would think people don't want to talk about climate solutions anymore. They want to talk about, as Tim said, cheap stuff and tasty stuff. As you also said, Ronja, the way, and I know we're going to talk about this next year, so I'm taking the last minutes to talk about agriculture. I hope that's okay for you, because I've recently been at an event, and it was called the Innovate convention in Osnabrück, and it was all about a resilient future. And my feeling was, don't we have to be resilient right now and be more regenerative in future, like take resilience now or live resilient now in our systems? And for me, the question is, how can you as companies, so this question is for all of you guys, be like support a regenerative agriculture? and where do you touch upon agriculture, and does this change, and do people who live from agriculture have to be afraid of algae and mycelium? I don't know. Maybe you can give us some insights on that as well. Dennis, do you want to start with harvesting macroalgae, because I have no clue how this looks like and what impact this can have on general agriculture?
Yeah, sure. And maybe I share a few pictures. I wanted to share this earlier, but I forgot. So you can probably see my slides now. And maybe, if you ask the question, should traditional agriculture be scared, of algae? No. I think they can be happy that there is algae, and I love to show this picture really, because this really shows what's currently, I would say, wrong with the food system. We have 89% of calories currently from our diets come from land, but we have 71% ocean on our planet. So there's a huge imbalance in how do we actually harvest most of our food. And we are in macroalgae. So macroalgae is really the stuff that grows in the open waters, under the water, without any input of fresh water, fertilizer, soil, so algae or seaweed at least is really no competitor to land-based crops and to land-based agriculture. On the contrary, actually it allows to save precious resources that we need on land for the agriculture that we still want to continue in the future. But if we continue like we do today, and we have here amazing solutions present today, then there will be a tough competition around these resources. So we work mostly with brown seaweed and a few species from green seaweed. These are just a few examples that can already show you how different these species are. So there are really 10,000 different species, all looking different, tasting different, and offering a huge pool of new flavors and functionalities and nutritions. And how is it cultivated? Basically, you have dedicated seaweed farmers, most of them actually coming from the fishing industry. So they have a huge and strong know-how around the oceans. They have equipment to go onto the oceans. They have boats that can be repurposed for seaweed farming. And what they do in preparation to farm the seaweed is they have these seedlings. You have seaweed hatcheries where these seedlings attach to these tiny ropes, and then these tiny ropes get are tied around these bigger ropes, which are then deployed into the waters. And it's a super fast growing biomass. So in 4 months, they get up to 2 meters long, and then they're being pulled out again when the water temperatures rises. And crustaceans start to eat the seaweed, which we don't want for the quality, of course. There's always a part of the seaweed that gets that will be left in the oceans as a habitat for fishing community, not fishing communities, but fish populations. And then it gets processed. And the beauty about all of this is that most of these people are really coming from the fishing industry, or existing infrastructure is repurposed. So, for example, one of the seaweed species that we use is actually a process in a crab factory during those times where crabs are not produced or not processed in that sense. So there is a lot of synergy, and that this ecosystem can actually reinvent itself without asking fishermen or fisherwomen to work in a tofu factory. There's nothing wrong with tofu, but obviously they chose the life on the ocean for a reason, and they want to continue there. And they're already struggling to make a living due to quotas. Fish populations really being decimated, pockets of sea in the Baltic Sea where no fish is present anymore at all. So there's a lot of opportunity in this, both for mariculture, fishing communities, but also for land-based agriculture, if you ask me.
I would totally want to know more about whether there is an impact on the ocean if we take too much at some point. But I also want to know, Tim, what are the implications in your work? And Ronja, but Tim, maybe you can start, and then Ronja also maybe give some insights on regenerative agriculture and what you're doing there.
I mean, I think for us, I would say that the impact on agriculture is, I mean, probably while growing, there might be some impact, but also what we help is to reactivate certain industries. So there is, for example, the brewery that we've been taken over earlier this year, which is a kind of full brewery that has been shut down because the business didn't work any longer. And I mean, we've just leased the brewery, including the equipments. We even took some of the employees over, and with that, we even help kind of at least parts of the industry to find other monetarization concepts and keep employment life in certain areas. So the Böhmisch Brauhaus is in Großrösdorf, very small kind of area close to Dresden. I mean, aside from that, the market is, I've mentioned this earlier, is gigantic. So I don't believe that it's possible to kind of, let's say, cut meat consumption to, and again, speaking about meat here, but like to cut the meat consumption to zero in the near future. So, and also I think that's even also not necessary, at least from my perspective. We just need to make the consumption, or we need to drive the consumption levels down to a reasonable amount. And I think, that's completely fine. Also, what we are bringing in addition is to reduce the dependency of, let's say, certain areas from external sources. So with fermentation, you can simply produce the food where it's needed. So it's a technology that can easily be decentralized. So you can produce your proteins where you need it. In Europe, in China, like everywhere around the world, you produce it where you need it. There is no dependency on geographical conflicts, no dependency on supply chain issues that you might have. I mean, no, maybe also little, let's say, because you need certain feedstocks, but there's definitely less dependency from fermentation than from the actual systems that you have. Maybe one last point, because you said, shouldn't it be more about resilience today? I mean, I think in order to bring an impact, you need solutions that are mass market ready. So you need to really, it's like when we're speaking about niche concepts, it doesn't really help. And therefore, I'm convinced what we need solutions that make it easy for end consumers to adopt their behaviors. That's in food, but that's in mobility, that's in real estate, that's in energy, that's in all the different industries. The same thing. If you come up with solutions that are more sustainable, but people have to waive comforts at certain ends, it won't be appealing for the mass market. And therefore, I think it's on us, on the industry, on entrepreneurs, on startups to develop innovations that make it easy for the people to switch their diets to sustainable foods. If they have to waive nutrition, if they have to waive taste, texture, if they need to spend more money than they have, I mean, they couldn't even, but even if they wanted, they wouldn't do it. So we need to have solutions that make it easy for people to move from a less sustainable to a more sustainable behavior in any kind of industry. And I think that's what we're here for, and that's what we are trying to contribute.
I really love it, because my feeling is the new tech could be we could maybe call it resilient tech for future of food. Ronja, would you like to say something? Because I think you are touching actual agriculture, about resilience and regenerative agriculture, and maybe also one sentence for 2026, because we only have a few minutes left.
Okay, I'll be quick. Yes, regenerative agriculture is super important at Oatly. We have this Regen Ag program that is called Farm. And what we want to achieve with that is that we want to identify more precisely in the sourcing region of our oats that we purchase, so that we can avoid high emission areas such as peatlands, which is especially important in countries such as Finland, for example, where national agriculture emissions are comparatively high. So it is a global program, and we also did, for example, in Canada with our oat milling partners, we expanded the program, and we had financial incentivizations for farmers to adopt regenerative practices across 1,500 acres. We want to include biodiversity protection criteria in that program as well. Like soil health, biodiversity, emissions, of course, a huge thing for us, is all part of our Regen Ag programs that we're looking into and that we want to expand on and improve on in the future as well to become even more sustainable. So we have sustainability plans that are, our roadmaps in that area for the future. So one sentence for 2026, I can only always say keep watching the Oatly space, because we're always going for more ambition in sustainability areas, but we are also still innovative, and Oatly is always coming up with something, so should be exciting in 2026 as well. I hope that people follow that.
Dennis, one last sentence, one thing, one word, anything.
One last sentence, and then I also need to jump off. 2026, I think we will see a lot of new ingredients really also being implemented in food products, and my feeling is it won't be a big fuss. So people will just do it, and consumers will just accept it, and it will become the new normal. And this is what I'm really excited about. And most of these new ingredients will be regenerative, better for us, better for our planet. And I love to see all these innovations scaling next year.
Thank you, Dennis. Please feel free. I know work is pushing. Tim, do you want to share one last sentence, one last thought? A technology, a word, anything?
Yeah, I mean, surprisingly, I'm mentioning hybrids again. So I think next year will be the time of not meat alternatives, but the better meat, because what we're speaking about, and Ronja, when you are around Berlin, let me know. I'm happy to invite you and give you a try of our hybrid, so you can convince, or we can see if you are convinced afterwards. But I mean, it has better taste and texture. At least this is what end consumers say. Without knowing the product, so in blind tastings at least. It has the same nutritional values, but less fat, added fibers, more complete amino acid profile. So there's really no disadvantage of the product, but it is way cheaper, so more affordable, plus cuts emissions significantly. And I think that's probably my sentence for next year will be about better meat instead of meat alternatives.
Thank you so much. Let's go out of the box 2026 in language, with products, with ingredients, with going ahead and talking to the people out there. We are going to keep on talking about the market next year. Hopefully you will be there. I wish you a wonderful Christmas time and a happy new year already now. And thank you so much out there for listening. Thank you for all your insights, and have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for the invitation.